I paid every bill for my parents' house. I made sure they never went without. And on Christmas Eve, they looked my daughter in the eye and told her there was no place for her. That was the moment I realized. Blood means nothing if it comes without loyalty, if you've ever been betrayed by the people who should have stood by you. Don't just watch. Drop a comment and tell me if you'd have done the same thing. And don't forget to subscribe. Because what I did next, it didn't just shock my parents, it silenced my entire family. That night, when I finally came home from the hospital, I saw Emily on the couch, her coat still on, her overnight bag unopened, and I knew something was very, very wrong. I was halfway through my night shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed. It was a simple text from Emily. "I'm home." I frowned. She was supposed to be at my parents' Christmas Eve dinner, her first time driving there on her own. I'd imagined her sitting at the crowded table, wearing that green sweater she picked out just to impress my mom, proudly holding the cookies she baked herself. Instead, when I walked through the door at 2 a.m., I found her on the couch, curled up, still wearing her coat, her overnight bag untouched. "Emily?" My voice came out softer than I intended. She opened her eyes like she'd never really been asleep. "Hey." Her smile was small, strained. "Why are you here?" She hesitated, biting her lip before saying it. "They said there wasn't any room for me." I stood frozen. "What do you mean, no room?" "At the table," she whispered, her voice breaking in the middle. "Grandma said it was too full." Aunt Tracy nodded like it was just obvious, and Megan was sitting in my usual spot. Her laugh was dry, sharp around the edges. Grandma looked at me like I'd shown up at the wrong house. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Emily kept going, each word quieter than the last. She said there wasn't a bed left either, but they didn't want me driving late, so I left. "Did anyone offer to bring you home?" I asked. "No." "Did you eat?" She glanced toward the coffee table. A single slice of toast sat there, cold and bent in half, with half a banana on the side. "That was my Christmas dinner," she said, with a shrug that didn't hide the hurt in her eyes. Something inside me twisted, sharp and cold. Emily forced a laugh, like it might make this whole thing less humiliating. "I didn't want to make them uncomfortable, Mom," I thought. If I smiled enough, it wouldn't matter. And then she said it, the words that shattered me. I felt like I didn't belong there, like I was extra. I sat beside her, pulled her against me, and she didn't resist. Her shoulders sagged the way they do when you've been holding yourself together too long. I stroked her hair, but my mind was already racing. I'd given my parents everything. Paid. Their mortgage, their bills. I made sure they never worried about medical costs or groceries, and still, they looked my daughter in the eye, my kind, sweet Emily, and told her there was no room for her. Not no space. No her. I stared at that piece of toast, like it was evidence in a trial. My father had been there. My mother, Linda, queen of passive-aggressive cruelty, had probably delivered the words with that same sweet tone she used whenever she wanted. To humiliate me as a kid. And Tracy? Oh, Tracy would have smiled, enjoying every second. I kissed Emily's temple. "Go get some sleep, baby," I whispered. She nodded. But before heading to her room, she looked at me and said, "Mom," I thought. Grandma liked me. I smiled for her. I lied for her. She's just stressed, sweetheart. But the second Emily's door closed, my smile fell. I walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Nothing special, just leftovers from before my shift. I should have been exhausted, but anger is better than caffeine. I leaned against the counter and stared at Emily's untouched bag. She'd packed it so neatly, even brought that stupid tin of cookies she was so proud of. My chest burned. That was when I remembered the house I bought, the house my parents lived in as if it were theirs, the house I paid for, month after month, while they turned my daughter away on Christmas Eve. My phone buzzed again. A new message. "Tracy." Don't overreact. Ta. Was just a mix-up. Emily should have told us she was really coming. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. A mix-up? There were 28 people at that table, a neighbor, 2 cousins I haven't spoken to in a decade, and yet somehow there was no room for my daughter. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop. I pulled up every bill I'd ever paid for my parents. The mortgage statements, the utility payments, the medical coverage, years of sacrifices. Staring back at me in black and white. Somewhere down the hall, I heard Emily shifting in her bed. I thought of her cold toast, of the way her voice cracked when she said, "I thought Grandma liked me." Something in me settled, cold clear. I wasn't going to argue with my mother or Tracy or anyone else. No, I was going to do what I should have done years ago. I closed the laptop, my reflection staring back at me in the dark screen. They said there wasn't room for you, I murmured to myself. Then I smiled. Small, sharp, dangerous. Fine. Then there won't be room for them. By the time the sun came up, I hadn't slept. I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of papers spread out in front of me. Mortgage statements, utility bills, medical reimbursements, 7 years of proof. Proof that without me, my parents wouldn't even have a roof over their heads. Emily padded into the kitchen, hair messy, eyes still puffy from last night. She glanced at the papers, then at me. "You're still up," she said softly. "I had some things to review," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. She stared at me like she wanted to ask more. But instead, she just poured herself some cereal and sat quietly across from me. I reached over and brushed a crumb from her cheek. "I'm okay, Mom," she said. But I could hear the lie in her voice, and that was it. The last crack in my patience. Looked down at the stack of bills again. At every single month I'd carried them. All those times my mother called and said, "We're a little short this month, sweetheart." All those nights I skipped buying something for myself because they needed it more. I'd built their safety net, and they turned around and told my daughter she didn't belong at their table. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. I didn't answer. Minute later, it buzzed again. This time, a voicemail. I hit play. Laura. Her voice oozed sweetness like spoiled honey. "You know, last night was just chaotic. Don't hold it against us. Poor Megan didn't even have a real bed either. We made do. You need to stop overthinking everything. Call me back, honey." I stared at the phone until the screen went dark. Overthinking. That was her favorite weapon. If she could convince me I was too sensitive, she didn't have to admit she'd done anything wrong. Then Tracy's text came through. "Don't start drama, Laura. It's Christmas. Emily's tough. She'll be fine." My jaw tightened. I walked into my office, opened my laptop, and pulled up a new folder. The house. Every receipt, every payment, every document. If they wanted to, rewrite the past. I'd hand them the truth in black and white. Behind me, Emily hovered in the doorway. "Mom?" I turned. Her voice was small. "Are you mad at me? Because I left?" God. No. I crossed the room and cupped her face in my hands. "Sweetheart, I'm mad at them. Never at you." She nodded, but I saw the hurt lingering in her eyes. That night hadn't just been cruel. It had carved something into her, and I'd be damned if I let it scar. By noon, my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Finally!" my mother snapped, all pretense of sweetness gone. "Are you really ignoring me over this nonsense?" "Emily cried herself to sleep last night," I said flatly. There was silence on the other end. Then she sighed, bored, like I'd brought up the weather. "She's a teenager. They cry over everything." Something inside me went still. "Mom," I said carefully, "do you even hear yourself?" "Oh, for heaven's sake, Laura, don't start lecturing me. We've done so much for you." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Really? You want to talk about what you've done for me?" Silence again. That was the thing about my mother. She hated numbers. Numbers didn't bend. Numbers didn't care about her stories or her excuses. "I'm sending you something," I told her. "Read it, then we'll talk." I hung up before she could answer. By late afternoon, Tracy decided to join the parade. She called, her voice fake sweet, but sharp underneath. Look, Laura, you're blowing this out of proportion. It's one night. Megan didn't mean anything by sitting in Emily's seat. You know Mom's stressed. Tracy, I cut her off. You stood there. You saw her leave, and you said nothing. She didn't even try to deny it. I didn't think it was my business. Of course she didn't. Enjoy your camp fundraisers, I said coldly, then hung up. For a few minutes, I just sat there in the silence, hands trembling on the edge of my desk. Then I started scanning. Mortgage, 7 years, every payment mine. Utilities, mine. Medical insurance, mine. Every dollar, every sacrifice. All documented, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. That night, Emily knocked on my door holding 2 mugs of tea. You're working late, she said, offering one to me. I smiled faintly. So are you. She climbed onto the edge of my bed and watched me sort through files. Are you fighting them? I paused, then met her eyes. I'm protecting us. She didn't ask anything else. She didn't need to. By midnight, the folder was complete, labeled, locked. When I shut the laptop, I caught my reflection in the screen again. Last night, I'd been furious. But tonight, I was steady. Cold, clear, steady. Picked up my phone and typed one message to my lawyer. We need to talk. Tomorrow. And for the first time in 24 hours, I felt something close to peace. Because this wasn't just about what they'd done to Emily. This was about everything. And now, I wasn't just reacting. I was ready to act. I barely slept the night before. By the time dawn painted the sky pale gray, I was already dressed, coffee in hand, and staring at the envelope on my counter. One sheet. Of paper. 60 days. Formal, legal. I didn't feel nervous. I felt calm. Emily came down the stairs, still rubbing her eyes. She stopped when she saw me holding the envelope. Mom, is that? Yes, I said simply. Her lips parted, and for a moment, she looked almost scared. Then slowly she nodded. Like she understood something had shifted. Something final. Are you sure? She asked. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I kissed her forehead, tucked the envelope under my arm, and grabbed my keys. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, the neighborhood was quiet. Their Christmas decorations still blinked on the porch, cheap strings of lights tangled like everything else in their lives. I walked up the steps. My hand didn't even tremble. I slid the envelope into the doorframe, right where I knew my mother would find it, and as I turned to leave, I heard it. The creak of the screen door. Laura? Her voice, sharp, too alert for this early in the morning. I turned. My mother stood there in her bathrobe, clutching a mug of coffee, looking at me like I was an unwelcome guest. Her gaze dropped to the envelope. What's this? Read it, I said evenly. She bent down, plucked it up, tore it open. Her eyes skimmed the words, and then her face went pale. You... Her voice cracked, then sharpened into a shriek. Frank! Get out here! She's lost her damn mind! I didn't flinch. My father appeared behind her, looking rumpled as if he'd been dragged from bed. What the hell is this? My mother shoved the letter into his chest. She's throwing us out! I could almost see the words sink in. He looked at me, not angry, just stunned, like he couldn't quite believe I wasn't bluffing. Behind them, I saw movement. Tracy, hair pulled back, clutching her coffee cup. Megan peeking out from behind her, like it was some Saturday morning show she didn't want to miss. Laura, what is this? Tracy demanded. I stayed at the bottom of the steps, calm, steady. It's what it looks like. 60 days. You're out. My mother laughed. Sharp, mocking. You... Don't mean this, you wouldn't dare, we're your parents. I didn't answer, and that's when she did it. She ripped the letter in half. There, she snapped, tossing the pieces into the air like confetti. Problem solved. I almost smiled. because for the first time I realized something. She still didn't think I'd follow through. "Frank," she hissed, turning to my father, "say something." He didn't. He just stared at me, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw something almost like guilt in his eyes. "Go home, Laura," my mother said coldly. "When you calm down, we'll talk about this like adults." But I didn't move. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of her holding the shredded letter, and tucked it away. Evidence. Not for her. For me, a reminder of why I was doing this. 60 days, I repeated, and turned toward my car. I'd barely reached the driver's seat when my phone buzzed. It was Tracy. "What the hell is wrong with you? You're ruining this family. You're jealous of Megan. Admit it. Jealous. Of Megan." My teeth clenched so hard I thought they might crack. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one message. To my lawyer. They've seen it. Move forward. When I got home, Emily was waiting by the window. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. I sat down beside her and told her anyway. "They think I'm bluffing," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. "Are you?" "No," I said, my voice steady. That night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't my mother. It wasn't Tracy. It was Nancy. "Laura," she began, her tone laced with false concern. "I heard about this misunderstanding. Your mother's beside herself. You can't actually mean to throw them out, can you?" "Yes," I said simply. She sputtered. "You've lost it. Family doesn't do this. What will people say?" I almost laughed. "They'll say I finally stopped paying for my own abuse." Nancy gasped like I'd slapped her. "You sound just like your father. Cold, heartless." I hung up. When I turned around, Emily was standing there, holding something in her hands. "Mom," she said quietly, I made this." She handed me a folder. Inside were screenshots. Every text. Every voicemail from my family since Christmas Eve. "You might need it," she said. For a second, I couldn't speak. And that was the moment. The mini twist I didn't see coming. My sweet, quiet Emily wasn't just hurting. She was standing with me. I hugged her tight. "They said there wasn't room for you," I murmured into her hair. "But we'll make room for us." Her arms wrapped around me, small but strong. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. But war was coming. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for me. I was fighting for her. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the calls to turn into full-blown harassment. My phone buzzed so often it felt like background noise. My mother's furious voicemails, Tracy's endless texts, Nancy's passive-aggressive concern. But I didn't bend. Each time I passed the folder Emily had made, our quiet little arsenal of proof, I felt that cold, steady calm settle over me again. I wasn't just standing my ground. I was done being the ground they stood on. It was early on a Thursday when the knock came. I opened the door to find my mother on my porch. Linda Grant, wrapped in her familiar robe. Her face pinched with rage and something that looked suspiciously like desperation. "You're really doing this," she hissed, waving the official notice my lawyer had sent. "After everything we've done for you." I leaned against the door frame, arms folded. "You mean the house I pay for? The bills? The insurance?" Her face flushed crimson. "We raised you, and you turned my daughter away on Christmas Eve." For a second, she faltered. Just for a second. But then she recovered with the same sharpness that had cut me down my entire life. "Stop dramatizing," she snapped. "She's a kid. She'll get over it." She didn't cry herself to sleep. "Because she's dramatic," I said, my voice low and steady. "She cried because her grandmother told her there was no room for her. That isn't a misunderstanding. That's cruelty." Linda stepped closer, her finger stabbing the air like a weapon. "If you do this, Laura, you will regret it. Family doesn't turn its back on family." "Funny," I said. "I was about to say the same thing." Behind her, I saw movement. Tracy, standing on the sidewalk like she couldn't wait to deliver her lines. "Laura!" she called, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Let's be reasonable. Mom didn't mean it like that. Why are you punishing everyone over one awkward night?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. "One night? No, Tracy. This is about every single time you all made it clear I was the outsider, and now you've dragged Emily into it. That was your mistake." Tracy's smile wavered for half a second. Then she pulled her favorite weapon, guilt. "You know what this will do to Megan?" she said loudly enough for the whole street to hear. "She loves you, Laura. She doesn't deserve to suffer because of your grudge." And there it was, the lie wrapped in sweetness. "Don't you dare use Megan," I snapped. "You didn't care when Emily spent Christmas alone, eating toast for dinner. That shut her up." For the first time in years, my voice didn't shake when I stood against them. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't defending. I was done. My mother looked at me, her eyes narrowing. Then she smiled, a cold, cruel smile I knew too well. "Fine," she said. "But if you do this, don't expect to have a family left. No one will take your side." I stepped closer, close enough that she could see I wasn't bluffing. "I don't need a family who would rather humiliate my daughter than pull up one more chair." For a second, the world went very, very quiet. And then my mother did what she always did when she was losing. She attacked. "You've always been ungrateful," she spat. "We gave you life, and this is how you repay us? You're pathetic. Just like Emily. Too soft, too weak. No wonder no one likes you." I didn't answer her. Emily did. She'd been standing in the hallway the whole time, listening. And when she stepped forward, her voice was steady in a way I'd never heard before. "You don't get to talk about me," she said. My mother blinked, stunned. Emily took another step, chin high. "You made me feel like I didn't matter. Like I was nothing, but you're wrong. I'm not nothing, and neither is my mom." Tracy's mouth actually dropped open. "And me?" I felt something shift. For 16 years, Emily had been quiet, gentle, afraid of making waves. And here she was, staring down Linda Grant like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. Linda recovered fast, of course. "Oh, for God's sake." "No," Emily said. Her voice cracked, but she didn't back down. "You don't get to talk to us anymore." Silence. Even Linda didn't know what to do with that. I put a hand on my daughter's shoulder, pride swelling so sharp it almost hurt. And then I turned to my mother. 60 days, I said again, calm as ever. Or the sheriff comes. Linda's jaw clenched. She looked at Tracy, at Frank, who had appeared behind them, silent, pale, and small. No one said a word. I shut the door, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like their daughter. I felt like their reckoning. That night, my lawyer called. "They're not moving," he said. "Good," I replied. "Neither am I." And then I told him to list the house. The buyer came back with one condition: vacant possession, exactly what I wanted. As I ended the call, I caught Emily watching me from the couch. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked proud. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just an eviction. It was the beginning of the end. The Grants didn't know it yet. But their collapse had already started. The day the movers arrived, the sky was a flat, heavy gray. I stood across the street, Emily beside me, her hand warm in mine. A pair of trucks rumbled up to the curb, the kind that didn't care about history or sentiment. They were here for one thing: to empty the house I'd been paying for 7 years. And for the first time, it didn't feel like my parents' house anymore. It was just a building. 4 walls that had been a shelter for people who thought they could treat my daughter like an afterthought and still live comfortably on my dime. The front door flew open. Linda stormed onto the porch, her robe flapping like a flag in the wind, her face twisted with fury. "This is insane!" she shrieked, pointing at the movers. "You can't do this! Laura, you're my daughter!" Her voice carried across the street. A few neighbors peeked through their blinds. I didn't look away. "I told you, Mom. 60 days. Frank shuffled out behind her, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He didn't speak. He never did. And then Tracy appeared, Megan trailing after her, wide-eyed. Tracy's hair was a mess, her voice sharp, as broken glass. "Laura, this is humiliating. Are you happy? You're tearing this family apart in front of everyone." "No," I said. "I'm just not letting you tear mine apart anymore." Linda clutched the porch railing, trembling with rage. "You think you've won? You think throwing us out makes you better than us?" I didn't answer, because it wasn't about being better. It was about being done. The movers climbed the steps, efficient and silent. Linda tried to block them, but one of them handed her the official paperwork. She froze, her hand shaking. She couldn't tear this one up. Emily squeezed my hand. I glanced down at her, my daughter, standing taller than I'd ever seen her. Linda's voice cracked. You'll regret this." Emily stepped forward. "No, we won't." The way she said it, calm, steady, unshakable, it silenced even Linda. For a moment, all you could hear was the sound of boxes being carried out. Tracy's phone buzzed. She turned away, muttering curses under her breath. Megan, confused, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Are we really leaving?" Tracy didn't answer. Linda's face hardened into something bitter and ugly, the kind of look that could sour milk. "You've turned Emily against her own family," she spat. I almost laughed. "No, Mom, you did that yourself." For a long, heavy moment, Linda just stared at me. Then she turned, slammed the door, and disappeared inside. But it didn't matter, because 2 hours later, she was gone. By the end of the day, the house was empty. I stood on the porch, looking at it one last time, and then I locked the door. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. A week later, the sale closed. The money hit my account, and for the first time, it wasn't about survival. It was about choice. I used part of it for Emily's college fund. She cried when I told her. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "Yes," I said, smiling. "I did." Because this wasn't just about a house. It was about giving my daughter what I never had, a safe place that no one could take from her. 2 months later, word got around that Linda and Frank had ended up in a cramped rental on the other side of town. Tracy lasted exactly 1 week with them before she kicked them out, too. Nancy? She stopped calling me. Probably ran out of things to say once she saw the proof I'd sent the whole family. Every receipt, every bill, every shred of evidence of what I'd carried alone for years. No one came to their rescue, and for the first time in my life, I didn't either. Emily and I sat on our porch one warm afternoon sipping iced tea. She leaned her head against my shoulder and smiled. "You know," she said, "I don't miss them." I looked out at the quiet street, at the sunlight slipping between the trees. Neither do I. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're proud of what you've done." I stared at it for a second, and then I deleted it. Emily smirked. "Was it Grandma?" "Probably." "Are you mad?" "No," I said. "I'm done." Because they once told my daughter there wasn't room for her. Now there was no room left for cruelty, manipulation, or control. And as I watched Emily laugh in the golden light of that afternoon, I realized something. I didn't lose a family. I finally chose one. And this time, it was enough. I stood there on the porch with Emily's laughter still in my ears, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight pressing down on me. It was quiet, so quiet that I could finally breathe. Maybe this is what peace is supposed to feel like. But then there's the ache, not sharp, not loud. Just the kind that sits deep in your chest when you realize how long you lived on scraps of affection, waiting for people to be better than they were ever willing to be. I think about every time I stayed silent. Every time I let them decide what I was worth, and I'll never do it again. Now I look at Emily, and I see what I should have seen all along. We were enough, maybe not for them, but for us. And that's all that matters. There's still a sting, but it's fading. Slowly. I wonder, sometimes if they'll call again, or if one day I'll hear a knock at the door. Maybe I'll answer, maybe I won't. Right now, I'm not ready to know. Tell me. If it were you, would you have done it sooner, or would you still be waiting for an apology that might never come? For now, I'll sit here with my daughter, watching the light shift through the trees, holding on to this quiet we fought so hard to earn. And maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will feel even lighter than today.